Welcome to Slow Night Ancient Tales. Tonight we journey to the northern landscapes of 1929 through the poetic words of Korean author Lee Hyo-seok in his work Sketches of the North. Let the vivid, nostalgic imagery of a forgotten apple orchard guide you into a deep, peaceful sleep. Make yourself comfortable, close your eyes, and let us begin. Sketches of the Northern Country, 1929, author Lee Hyo-seok, published in Samcholi, Issue 3, November 1929. 1. Apples. An apple orchard, a beautiful old orchard, an orchard that cannot be found now. Whether fallen or not, it is the apple loved since the time of Adam. The sharp sensation piercing the tongue, the fragrant flowers that make one dream, and the nostalgic old scent. Do you know, my dear, in this place long ago, the fragrant apple orchard, where flowers bloomed and fruits bore. An apple orchard starting from the top of the hill, sloping down and stretching to the edge of the stream. When the cold snow of the North Country melted and the willow branches by the stream drew water, sunlight flowed into the purple branches of the apple trees, and the wide apple orchard stretching 10 miles to the east and 10 miles to the south shone richly and beautifully. When the barley ears in the fields grew and the sound of flutes outside the village was quiet, the apple blossoms softly wrapped the hill, and the thick floral scent drifted gently over the hill, over the fields, across the stream, and into the village. There was no need to dream of lemon scents from southern lands. The apple blossoms here were the very dream of the village people. When the village maidens married in their crimson skirts, the apple blossoms fell, and in the late autumn, when golden waves rippled in the fields, the frosted clusters hung heavy and red on the branches. When the warm evening sun slanted over the hill, carts loaded with apples headed down the village road. A young man and woman sitting on the cart, their hair dyed by the golden rays, eating apples. Who knows if this was the beginning of corruption or the first step of downfall, but a bite for you and a bite for me. There was a beautiful story and an innocent pastoral song overflowing there. Do you know, my dear, in this place long ago, the fragrant apple orchard, where flowers bloom and fruits bear. But that too is an old story, an old picture. As years passed and moons went by and the position of the Big Dipper changed, this beautiful scenery also crumbled, and the quiet northern country moved on its own. The mountains moved, the water streams under the hills turned away, and the thirsty apple orchard gradually dried up. The sound of dynamite blasting echoed around the mountain corners. Rice paddies were cut away to lay new roads, fields were dug up, and telephone poles stood up. Straw shoes changed to rubber shoes, pine knot torches changed to electric lights, the blacksmith's forge changed to an iron factory, and the watermill changed to a rice mill. The fragrant apple orchard where flowers bloomed and fruits bore. They crushed it and built a train station over it, the village road at sunset where the apple cart used to roll. Over it, 2 lines of railway tracks stretched endlessly, carrying unfamiliar dreams, and the angular buildings of warehouses and halls stood tall over the hill. Black smoke stole the beautiful stories, and the smell of paint swallowed the flower scents. The railway brought the interior of Manchuria and took away the movers. Maidens were carried off to brothels, and young men were carried off to prisons. Smoke, paint, railways, stations, factories, warehouses, halls. This is now the new scenery of this northern village. It is a broken picture. The poison of false ideologies has completely killed the poetry of the village. However, what remains beautifully unchanged are the sunlight and the moonlight. The sunlight that ripened the heavy clusters of apples, and the moonlight that shone on the apple blossoms at night, are still shining with the same light on the railways, factories, and halls. A deep village, thick mountains, towering rocks, warm hot springs, clear streams, the sound of doves leaking from the woods, and the flowing clear stream. Going up along the stream on a quiet, secluded green hill stands a tall, elegant villa, an orchard like a paradise. That is the villa of the Russians. It is the villa of the Yankovsky family, white Russian elders who fled far to the east, chased out of their capital when the revolution exploded. As trains arrived and the world changed, this remote village, which used to be terrified at the mere sight of a uniform and a saber, now sees the arrival of the Russians, people with high noses and different skin colors. In this village where remnants of an old fortress stand, a place where Jurchen people used to enter in ancient times, the different colored Russians now enter, spreading their limbs among the white clothes. Russian beauties walking the streets with their arms and napes exposed, Russian beauties splashing in the hot spring water. They are the spectacle of the village. The hot water that melts the frozen flesh of the cold country, the group of beauties swimming within it, like a group of mermaids in the deep, misty sea. The elegance of sinking deeply into the water and then coming out to the edge of the spring, slowly stretching their waists, seems to have a much deeper charm than that of Yang Guifei from ancient times. Bathed in the sunlight filtering through the window, their steaming skin, breasts, waists, bellies, and both legs are all as dazzling as white snow. A group of sleek beasts, a group of white beasts. The sight of them wrapped in crimson and green dresses on the green lawn of the summer villa, sitting around a white table, drinking and laughing, while children run and play at the edge of the lawn. The sight of driving light cars along the village roads, to the streets, and to the bathing beaches. It is an enviable scene. It is a lively scenery of the village. Driven from their country, fleeing in an instant without being able to take what they owned, they are rather like this. Even after coming to this remote village, deep in the mountains, their luxury remains the same. Wherever the bourgeoisie goes, they know how to make their lives glossy and how to enjoy them. Anyway, the Russians at the hot spring is an enviable scene and an irritating scenery. 3. Scenery of station. 2 lines of railway tracks giving a cold, sharp sensation, and cosmos flowers on the platform swaying gently in the breeze, a quiet rural station. As train time approached, the noisy chattering of elementary school students filled the front yard, and inside the waiting room, a couple of women carrying baskets of potatoes on their heads jingled the coins they had bought at the market. Suddenly, the platform became noisy. The loud sounds of travelers chattering and station workers shouting could be heard. After a while, bursts of laughter blew over like the wind, and mixed in with it was a sound of someone shouting loudly about something. People gathering one by one outside the ticket gate formed a circle on the platform, wrangling over something. Looking through the moving forest of people, one could see an old woman in fluttering, shabby clothes. She dragged only one rubber shoe, and the torn pieces of her skirt fluttered wildly in the wind, along with her disheveled, singed hair. Looking around at this person and that person with grimy eyes, the woman cried out as if appealing. "Where did my son go? You travelers, hurry up and give me my son." Giggling laughter burst out, and the people mumbled while avoiding the woman's eyes. The station workers pulled at her arm, looking annoyed. "Hurry up and get out. Those Russians in bright red clothes took your son." However, the woman did not even try to move from that spot and cried out mournfully. "My son who left over the pass on a heavy snowy night, why hasn't he returned to the end? Where did my son who went to study to become a governor go, leaving this mother all alone?" Every time a train left, every time a train came in, this woman who came to the station platform and mournfully cried out, "My son." She was a pitiful woman in this village, intended as a crazy lady. Her only son, whom she had sent away to Seoul to study, did not return with a governor's title, even after 7 or 8 years. Even if he had gone to pick stars from the sky, he should have returned by now. But the son who went to get a governor's title did not return. But since he was not a deeply unfilial son who would betray his poor mother, she leaned her increasingly thin body against the twig gate, looking toward the front of the village, dreaming of her son's triumphant return with blue and red flags leading the way. She forced herself to wash away the tears, blurring her vision with brilliant illusions. However, even after 10 years passed and railway tracks were laid in front of the village, the shadow she hoped for was not seen, and only loud rumors echoed in her ears. Dizzying rumors followed one after another, that he became a socialist and appeared in the newspaper, that he went to prison, that he entered Russia with the Russians holding red flags. At these rumors, the mother agonized even when a crow cawed, and her heart rotted even when the moonlight grew dim. 10 years passed, 2 more years went by, 3 more years went by, and it was the spring of the 13th year. One morning, when dogs barked and a flock of jackdaws in the trees were particularly noisy, the postman brought a small parcel to this shack soaked in tears. A strange cylinder packed squarely with wood. Ah! How could anyone have known that it was her son? That it was her son who made her dream of a governor and made her age waiting by the door. Her son, whom she had hoped and hoped for, returned crouched inside a small wooden cylinder after 13 years. When the cotton cloth was removed, a couple of thick, gathered bones scattered starkly on the mother's lap. He had died in a foreign land fighting abroad, and his comrades had gathered his bones and sent them far away to his homeland for burial. What is this? How can this be? The words were only thoughts in her mouth. Overwhelmed by the sheer shock, the mother fainted on the spot. It was only when the day broke that sounds of wailing flowed from this house. From then on, the mother lost her mind day by day. She was no longer the perfectly sane mother of the past. Day after day, night after night, she wandered around the village crying mournfully and roamed the train station shouting, "My son." Whether it was a rainy day or a snowy night, every time a train left and every time a train came in, the sound of her looking for my son flowed mournfully over the station platform. Where has my son gone? My son who left over the pass on a snowy night, where has he gone, leaving this mother all alone? A whistle blew around the bend of the mountain, and a train pulled in. Station workers, people waiting to board, people gathered on the platform, all scattered. The woman peered into the windows of the passenger cars one by one, beating on the windows with both arms, and cried out pitifully, "Where is my son? Where is Ilson?" People who were sticking their heads out of the windows spat and slammed the windows shut. A married couple of Russians, who seemed to be heading to the hot springs, dressed in a mix of white clothes and Western suits, stepped off the train. The woman clenched both fists, ran hastily over, grabbed the couple, and said, "Give me my son. Russians who took my son, hurry up and find my son." The couple, not understanding the situation, stood blankly for a long time, babbled something in a sheep-like bleating sound, shook her off, and headed for the ticket gate. But the woman grabbed their clothes with both arms and followed behind them, still shouting loudly, "You travelers, give me my son. Russians, hurry up and find my son." Airplanes. Across the clear, dark blue northern sky, a color so vivid it looked like squeezed bellflower juice that might stain if touched, airplanes flew over in pairs, their wings shining white in hue. The sun crossed the overlapping mountain ranges thousands of feet above sea level, their light and nimble sounds vibrating the heavy air. Airplanes! Airplanes! People who crossed hills and crossed rivers to see the airplanes had packed the streets since dawn. Waves of white clothes surged and swayed on the sandy hills of the parade ground. Wow, indeed. Look how incredibly high they are. What kind of magic is that? On the wide field of the parade ground, swords flashed, and troops in yellow uniforms strutted about. When they set up camp in the middle of the yellow soldiers swarming like bees, the maneuver exercise began. Suddenly, gunfire and rapid-fire artillery crackled like roasting beans, and the sounds of cannons that seemed to swallow the earth shook the mountains and fields. As the pairs of airplanes skimmed low over the white clothes, a barrage of bombs followed, shaving down the sandy hills. Smoke and the smell of gunpowder surrounded the hills. The waves of white clothes scattered wildly in confusion. The people who had come to watch the airplanes took to their heels, running away as fast as they could, crossing the hills and rivers again. "Airplanes! Airplanes! A war has broken out. Where should we go?" Thanks to the unwelcome torment of the airplanes, the village people could not sleep that night due to anxiety. Modern Girl Melon. While it has the fierce winter of harsh winds blowing from Siberia and blizzards sweeping down the banks of the Tumen River, Horyong also has the fresh summer of beauties and melons. Perhaps because it is located along the clear Tumen River, there are many beauties with fine skin in Horyong. Beauties and melons, I don't know what causal relationship exists between them, but in Horyong, where there are many beauties, there are also many melons. Almost all the areas along the railway heading north from Horyong are famous melon-producing regions. Horyong melons piled like mountains on the street, yellow melons as big as fists that crunch crisply between the teeth, fresh northern melons, the scent of summer, the beauties in cool, unlined summer jackets, looking lovely over the gates of every house, cherry clusters over the fence that make you want to snap off a branch. These too are the scents of summer. The scent of flesh at home, the scent of melons on the street. The summer in Horyong is a town of scents. Horyong, summer, melons, beauties. Here is a scene of Horyong, a fresh scenery of beauties and melons indeed. It was a sweltering afternoon. As the whistle of the train crossing the borderline sounded loudly, the eyes of the border guards flashed sharply in the front yard of the station. As the train blew off steam, passengers poured out into the wide yard. Among them was a single red flower that distinctly caught the eye. A bobbed hair, Western-dressed modern beauty, a straight nose showing a strong will, proud eyes, tightly closed lips, a stern face difficult to approach. She is an educated modern girl, not an ordinary one. On top of that, an eye-catching bright red jacket, a slender curved nape under the bobbed hair, smooth legs under a silver-green skirt, the prime condition of a modern beauty. Beautiful legs. She is a highly fragrant Horyong beauty. Whether they are Chinese merchants or coolies, any man wearing barbarian clothes or a young man in a Russian shirt with shaggy hair, it would make sense to interrogate them or search them all. But for a beautiful, educated modern girl, there should be no suspicion to warrant a body search or interrogation. However, because they are experts, and their eyes are sharp beyond what ordinary people like us can imagine, whatever meaning they saw in her, they stopped this noble modern girl. After opening and going through the insides of bags and shabby bundles of bedding right in the wide yard, finishing the interrogations of several foreign-looking men, their turn came to the beauty who was waiting anxiously. Jotting something down in a pitch-black notebook, they briefly interrogated her, and eventually they ordered her to open the small basket she was carrying. The beauty's box. Could there really be opium or bombs inside it? Perhaps saddened that a cute young woman's secret box was about to be recklessly opened on the street, like a naked woman placed on an operating table, the woman's face clouded for a moment. But it is the border, and it is the authorities' order, so it couldn't be helped. The beauty carefully opened the basket and showed the inside. The border policeman, with a narrow gaze that could be lustful or cautious, strongly requested her to take out the things inside. The beauty, in shame or anxiety, silently took out the items one by one. A towel, cosmetics, an opera bag. The beauty hesitated for a long while, then continued to take out silk stockings and bright red drawers. The policeman vigorously shook the bright red drawers and the silk stockings carrying the scent of flesh right on the main street, items that were seductive just to look at. The beauty, her face flushing red with shame, hastily tried to shove them back into the box, but the policeman's hand stopped her and pointed inside the box. What is this? What she silently took out were melons in a net bag. Melons? Melons that had lost their vitality and freshness, perhaps bought and put in there sometime, somewhere. A couple of them were wrinkled and withered inside the net, but they were undeniably Horyong melon seeds, yellowish and fist-sized. Melons! The police officer, who had expected something far more unusual than melons, shook his head and shouted again. Having shown all there was to show, the beauty gathered her belongings and stood up from the spot. The innocent modern girl, what else could possibly be in her box? As if indignant over being needlessly humiliated with her stockings waved around and her undergarments exposed on the street, the beauty crossed the wide yard of the station toward the street, overflowing with spirit. The police officers put their heads together, looking into the black notebook, and debated something busily. Since they are experts, their intuition is different from that of ordinary people. They possessed sharp eyes that we could not even conceive. As their sharp gazes fell upon the back of the beauty who had almost crossed the wide yard, they called her back again. Whether it's 10 times or 100 times, doing exactly as ordered without a word is what the border is. It is the law. But opening it 10 times or 100 times, that basket is still that basket. Did a miraculous wonder happen in the meantime? Could something else be inside? Again, the towel, cosmetics, opera bag, stockings, drawers, and the net of melons poured out onto the street. No miracle happened. Melons! As if still craving melons even in Horyong where they are plentiful, the police officer took out one melon from the net. Is a withered, shriveled melon really that desirable? Well, even if it is withered, it was stored in the hands of a beauty rather than being a fresh one on the street, so it might be desirable. Looking as if they might pop it right into their mouths, they smelled the scent of the withered melon. No, you can't take that. The beauty suddenly tried to snatch the melon from their hands. I'm going to give it to the child at home. The child at home? The police officer smiled meaningfully. No, not that one. In the midst of this scuffle, how pitiful! The melon in her hand fell to the ground. The melon fell and broke, and from inside it emerged a pitch-black weapon. Whether it was a Browning, a Colt, or a Mauser, it was a very cute weapon. Another melon dropped consecutively. From inside it, black beans scattered like rain. On the wide yard of the station, the blue barrel carrying a modern dynamic beauty and the black beans shone terrifyingly under the border's setting sun. The sharp gazes of the police officers, also catching the setting sun, pierced the face of the extraordinary modern girl. Our journey through the northern sketches ends here for tonight. Though the landscapes may change with time, the gentle moonlight from the old apple orchard remains to shine upon your dreams. May your night be as peaceful and fragrant as those blossoms. Sleep well, and good night.